In a Capitol chamber packed with reporters and television cameras, the air erupted as Senator Ted Cruz slammed his hand on the table, cutting off Jasmine Crockett mid-sentence. He pointed directly at her, accusing her of pushing social justice policies that were nothing more than disguised favoritism, a handout for those not good enough. His words cut like a blade, turning the hearing into a battlefield. Jasmine sat motionless, her calm and silent gaze pressed heavily on nowhere. The chamber fell into a suffocating pause. Cruz believed he had seized control, hammering on about a society built on merit, on performance, and on results. But Jasmine's silence showed unease in the crowd. It left everyone wondering, was she about to unleash something powerful enough to change the situation in front of millions watching live? Enough. Ted Cruz's fist slammed against the desk. The sound cracked through the chamber. He leaned toward the microphone, his voice sharp and commanding. The so-called social justice policies you praise are nothing more than disguised favoritism. They turn merit into an afterthought, opening doors for those who aren't good enough. America wasn't built on privilege. It was built on ability. The words landed heavily. The entire chamber froze silent except for the furious clatter of reporters' keyboards. Cameras swung to Jasmine Crockett, waiting for her response. Cruz pressed on his cadence, tightening like a drumbeat. Affirmative action born in the 1960s claimed to open doors for the disadvantaged. But look at what it became, a free pass for the unqualified, an insult to those who climbed on merit alone. He lowered his voice, then snapped it back with force. Quota. Numbers. Arbitrary limits. Congresswoman Crockett. Can you deny it? Quotas are the clearest proof of favoritism. Whispers rippled across the chamber. A reporter typed quickly, Cruz corners Crockett early. Cruz locked his eyes on Jasmine. He paused, savoring the silence. Tell the country. Do you support favoritism? The camera zoomed in. Jasmine sat tall, gaze fixed on her opponent. She didn't flinch. She didn't speak. 5 seconds. 10. The silence stretched taut as a wire. Cruz narrowed his eyes, smirk tugging at his lips. He thought he had cornered her on live television. But Jasmine's voice cut through the stillness, low and steady. The quotas you invoke, let's be clear. For decades, quotas weren't used to help black students. They were used to limit them, to shut them out of universities. That is the truth. Cruz scowled, opened his mouth, but Jasmine pressed harder, her words gathering speed. Affirmative action was created to tear down those barriers. It doesn't steal opportunity from anyone. It restores opportunity to those it was denied. You call that favoritism, I call it justice. Chairs shifted. A few reporters raised their heads, rewriting their leads. Cruz snapped back voice-cutting justice by lowering standards. Justice by making achievement meaningless. Jasmine leaned toward the mic. No pauses now. She fired back. No, Senator. Justice means starting at the same line. No one can prove their ability if they're locked out before the race begins. Social justice doesn't erase the rules, it guarantees everyone gets to play. A rumble of voices broke out, some clapping despite the rules. The gavel pounded for order, but the momentum had shifted. Cruz tried to steady himself, voice dropping. Congresswoman, what you've said is nothing but sophistry. The truth is, your policies turn education into a political game. Jasmine didn't let the opening hang. She drove straight in. No, Senator. Sophistry is what you're doing, mixing fear with half-truths. You know history. You know quotas were used to keep black students out, and you choose to ignore it. The cameras caught Cruz's tightened jaw, lips pressed thin. Jasmine didn't stop. You speak of merit. So do I. But merit is not the privilege of the few. Merit means nothing unless everyone gets to compete. And here's the truth America must face for decades. Millions were cut out of the game before they had the chance to prove themselves. Is that what you call fairness? Camera shutters rattled. Reporters tweeted in real time Crockett. Merit only matters when everyone gets to compete. Cruz clenched his fist, voice rising, trying to reclaim control. Texans don't need sentimental speeches. They need results. They need a system built on effort, not handouts. Jasmine lifted her chin, eyes sweeping the press gallery, then fixed back on Cruz. The people don't need hollow promises. They need the truth. And the truth is, this nothing is handed out. All they ask for is a chance history has denied them over and over again. She drew a steady breath, then carved each word like a verdict. Social justice is not charity. It is a right. It is the only way merit truly has meaning. The chamber erupted. Murmurs, applause, pens tapping furiously against tables. Cruz shook his head, spitting the words through clenched teeth. This is nothing more than cover for policies that have failed. Jasmine struck back, sentences short, staccato relentless. Failure is when a child is forced to abandon their dream because of skin color. Failure is when talent is buried under invisible walls. Failure is when a senator uses this floor to recycle the same old lies. The chamber shook with noise. The gavel pounded, but order was gone. The cameras swung to Jasmine's face. No smile, no triumph, just unflinching eyes, her voice flat sharp as steel. Senator Cruz, you say you want merit? So do I. But merit cannot exist inside a system born from injustice. You accuse me of supporting favoritism. I'll say it plainly. What I support is justice. And justice will not bow to your lies. Applause roared, spilling beyond the chamber doors, echoing down the hallways. On a live broadcast, millions of Americans watched the transformation. This was no longer a policy debate. It was a battlefield truth against distortion, history, against denial. And from that very first round, the nation understood this fight would not end in the chamber. Ted Cruz leaned into the microphone, his voice even metallic. Meritocracy. That is the true foundation of a fair society. If you're good enough, you rise. If you're not, you fall behind. Simple. Clear. And that's how America became the most powerful nation on earth. He paused, glanced at Jasmine Crockett, then pressed on. What she defends affirmative action quotas is just a mask. It lets the unqualified slip into places they don't belong. It robs the truly capable of their opportunities. And that Congresswoman is the real injustice. Keystrokes rattled from the press row. Cameras swung in tight on Jasmine's face, waiting for her to move, to blink, to react. She didn't. She sat upright, eyes locked on Cruz, her expression stone still. Cruz thought he owned the room. He raised his hand, voice climbing words, striking like hammer blows. In America, opportunity must rest on personal effort. No one deserves an extra advantage just because of the past. We cannot build the future on exceptions. Meritocracy is the bedrock of justice, and anyone who challenges it is in truth challenging the core principle of this nation. He cut the air with his hand, enunciating each word. The truly gifted don't need special treatment. They don't need quotas. They don't need special policies. They only need fair rules. And that is what I defend. The chamber stirred. Some lawmakers nodded. Others frowned. Jasmine stayed silent. 10 seconds. 20. The cameras recorded every unmoving frame. In the press gallery, whispers broke out. She's cornered, isn't she? One reporter murmured. Another shook his head, eyes fixed on her. No. It's a tactic. Seeing no reaction, Cruz grew bolder. He dropped his voice, slow and deliberate like a lecture. Meritocracy is not just an idea. It is a proven truth. Look at the millions of immigrants who came here with nothing and rose through sheer effort. No quotas, no favoritism, just talent. That is the clearest evidence. He swung back to Jasmine, voice sharpened. So tell the American people, Congresswoman, do you dare say that ability no longer matters? Do you dare say we should abandon meritocracy in favor of this counterfeit fairness? The chamber tightened. Everyone waited. Jasmine slowly lifted her glass, took a sip, and set it down. Still silent. Cruz's brow furrowed, then curved into a mocking smile. He thought he had broken her. He turned to the audience, his tone swelling with confidence. The American people don't need pretty words. They need the truth. And the truth is, this meritocracy is fairness. Period. The gavel struck, calling for order. But the air remained dense, heavy-charged. Jasmine didn't flinch. Her eyes stayed locked on Cruz. Expression steady. The silence pressed harder than words. A veteran reporter exhaled. Cruz is overplaying it. He doesn't realize her silence is the weight in the room. Another leaned closer. Exactly. The longer she waits, the more the pressure shifts onto him. One sentence at the right time, and she erases everything he just said. Cruz inhaled, ready to pile on more statistics, more anecdotes, to drive the point home. Then he stopped. Because Jasmine moved, just a tilt of her head. Her lips pressed tight, her eyes never leave him. No words. Yet the room froze. Her silence wasn't a retreat. It was a strategy, letting tension climb until her opponent consumed himself. In the back, a young lawmaker leaned to his colleague. The whole country's watching. He's drowning in his own words. She just needs one line, and it's over. No one in the chamber dared breathe, and when Jasmine finally opened her mouth, every camera, every microphone, every eye snapped toward her. No one knew what she was about to say, but everyone understood it would be the blow that counted. Ted Cruz leaned back, arms crossed, a faint smirk curling on his lips. He believed he had sealed the debate. Reporters bent over their laptops, fingers flying, ready to type the headline, "Cruz crushes Crockett with meritocracy argument." But Jasmine quietly opened the folder in front of her. The snap of the binder echoed like a crack in the chamber. She pulled out a thick file, placed it neatly on the table, then lifted her gaze straight at Cruz. "Senator Cruz," she began, her voice slow but ironclad. "You say meritocracy is the foundation, that if you're good enough, you'll get your chance. Fine. Then let me tell you about one case." The chamber hushed. Cameras zoomed in tight. Elliot Harmon, Queens, New York, 1964, a black student. SAT score 1420. At that time, such a score was extraordinarily rare. His application was stellar. Yet Wharton rejected him. She paused, eyes locked on Cruz. The reason written in his rejection letter: the quota had been filled. The school had already met its limit of black students. He was denied not because of lack of ability, but because there were, in their words, already enough students of his race. Gasps rippled. A few reporters froze mid-typing. Jasmine's tone sharpened, rising with force. In that same year, a white student from a wealthy family, SAT score of 1180, mediocre by every measure, was accepted into Wharton. Not because of talent, because of pedigree, because of privilege. That is the truth. The chamber jolted. Lawmakers exchanged looks. Cameras fired relentlessly. Cruz shot to his feet, arms slicing the air, voice pitched high. "You are twisting. One example. One isolated case cannot disprove a principle. A cherry-picked story does not erase the fact meritocracy remains the fairest system we have." He jabbed a finger at her. "You cannot tear down an entire system with a single anecdote." The chamber roared. The gavel banged for order, but tension only thickened. Jasmine did not rise. She stayed seated, her voice calm, but cutting in measured strokes. No, Senator. This is not an anecdote. This is evidence. And Elliot Harmon is not alone. Thousands of Elliot Harmons existed. They were brilliant. They were qualified. And they were stopped cold by quotas by the very system you defend. She raised the file high-angled toward the cameras. This is a real file, with a rejection letter, with the test scores, with the name of the white student admitted in his place. I did not bring a story. I brought history. The chamber fell into stunned silence, then exploded with chatter. Reporters hammered at keyboards. Twitter lit up with a breaking line. Crockett unveils Elliot Harmon file 1420 sat rejected by Wharton due to quota. Cruz lifted his hand, voice sharp, near shouting, "This is political theater. You are exploiting emotions. Meritocracy cannot be dismantled by one file." Jasmine turned toward him, gaze steady voice like steel. "You call it theater, I call it proof. Your meritocracy is not absolute. Talent alone has never been enough to break barriers of race, wealth, or lineage. Elliot Harmon scored higher, but was denied. Another scored lower, but was accepted. That is the truth you refuse to face." Noise surged louder than the gavel pounding. A lawmaker muttered under his breath, "The tide has turned." Cruz fought to regain ground, pointing voice, rough Congresswoman. "You are undermining the people's faith in the system. You cherry-pick for your gain. That is not debate. That is manipulation." Jasmine's reply was sharp, unwavering. "No, Senator. Manipulation is what you're doing standing here and telling the nation that talent always finds its place when history proves the opposite. Manipulation is twisting quotas once used to keep black students out into an excuse to deny social justice today. I am not spinning stories. I am laying down the truth. And truth does not need embellishment." Applause erupted, rolling through the chamber despite the gavel's frantic pounding. Cameras swept wide half the chamber, clapping the other half rigid in silence. Cruz stood stiff, scanning the room. Jaw clenched. He tried to hold composure, but the shift was visible. The balance had moved. Jasmine closed the file, her voice even resolute. "Elliot Harmon is proof. Not to abolish meritocracy, but to remind us in America, meritocracy has never been absolute. And if we refuse to face that, we repeat injustice in the name of fairness." The chamber buzzed like a storm. On live television, millions of viewers saw what the room already knew: Cruz had lost control. The battle wasn't over. But from this moment on, it was clear Cruz was no longer the one leading the fight. The gavel struck. The chair's voice was steady. "We will now hear from the next witness." The back doors opened. A small framed woman stepped inside, clutching a folded paper in both hands. Reporters snapped to attention. Camera flashes erupted. George Stephanopoulos announced Danielle Harmon, daughter of Elliot Harmon. The chamber went silent. Jasmine lifted her gaze, her expression softening for just a flicker before settling back into calm. Danielle approached the microphone. She inhaled sharply, her voice trembling. "My father, Elliot Harmon, scored 1420 on the SAT in 1964. He dreamed of Wharton. He prepared for years. But he received a rejection letter that said the quota was full. They told him there were already enough black students." She paused, gripping the paper tighter. The clatter of keyboards stopped. Reporters looked up. "For the rest of his life, my father believed he wasn't good enough. He never spoke of his score. He drove a bus for 32 years. He raised us. But he lived under the weight of a lie that his dream failed because he wasn't worthy." A sob caught in the mic. Danielle steadied herself, forcing her voice through. But that wasn't the truth. He wasn't denied because he lacked ability. He was denied because of his skin color. He was more than qualified. And the system told him, You don't need to be smarter. You just need to be white. The chamber was a vacuum. No one breathed. Cameras panned across tense faces. Some bowed in shame. Jasmine gave a small nod, a signal. This was living proof. Danielle's voice strengthened. This wasn't just my father's tragedy. It was the tragedy of an entire generation. How many Elliot Harmons were stopped at the gate? How many lived their lives believing they weren't enough? This wasn't their failure. It was the system's failure. A reporter whispered, "This is the textbook definition of systemic racism." Danielle gripped the mic, driving each word. Racism isn't only about personal bias. It is designed. It is written into rules, into regulations, into quotas. My father was a victim of that system, and we must call it by its name, systemic racism. Murmurs broke out. Lawmakers exchanged uneasy glances. Ted Cruz shot up, hand slicing the air. This is emotional exploitation. One person's story cannot dictate national policy. We cannot build law on personal tragedy. Noise erupted, but the weight of the room wasn't on his side. Reporters typed furiously. Cruz interrupts, but momentum with Crockett. Danielle turned to Cruz, tears brimming, but her voice ironclad. "Senator, this isn't just emotion. This is my father's life. He lost his chance not because he wasn't capable, but because of one-line quota. And if you call that fairness, then say it openly to the American people. No matter how good you are, if you're black, and the quota is full, you're out." The chamber recoiled. Cruz opened his mouth, but the uproar drowned him out. Lawmakers sat back, arms crossed, silent. Reporters banged out headlines. Elliot Harmon's daughter. My father was good enough, but denied for his skin color. Jasmine leaned toward her mic, her voice clear-controlled. This is not politics. This is truth. Elliot Harmon proves that Senator Cruz's so-called meritocracy has never been absolute. Ability was not enough. Skin color barred the door, and America cannot call that fairness. Applause rippled through the chamber, unstoppable despite the gavel. Cameras swept the room, somber faces, quiet nods. Cruz tried to cut back in his voice, sharp with frustration. This is stagecraft. This is Crockett, turning a personal tragedy into a political weapon. But his words drowned under the noise. A veteran journalist in the front row muttered, "This debate isn't theory anymore. It just became an indictment." The chamber fell back into silence, and in that silence, the verdict was unmistakable. The room had shifted. The weight of the crowd and the country was with Jasmine. The chamber still reverberated with the echo of Danielle Harmon's testimony. The air was dense, reporters hammering their keyboards, while Cruz sat, stiff fingers clawed against the edge of his desk. Jasmine waited until the murmurs faded. Then she laid a hand on the folder before her eyes locked on Cruz, her voice cutting through the tension. "Senator Cruz says meritocracy is the foundation. That in America, if you're good enough, you'll get your chance." But the story of Elliot Harmon proves the opposite. The chamber froze. Jasmine pressed forward, her voice tightening, words gathering force. Elliot Harmon had brilliance. He had the numbers. 14.1 in the 1960s, an extraordinary score. He had dreams, preparation. But he did not have the skin color the system favored. And for that, the doors of higher education slammed shut. He was rejected. Another student with lower scores but wealth and pedigree was admitted. That is the true face of the meritocracy you celebrate. The clatter of typing stopped. Every reporter looked up. Meritocracy is often a mask. In America's elite education system, success has never rested on talent alone. It rests on power, on privilege, on lineage. And when those weigh more than ability, we do not have meritocracy. We have injustice dressed up as fairness. Whispers swelled. Some lawmakers nodded. Others stared down, avoiding eye contact. Cruz sprang to his feet, arms slicing the air. "Distortion, Congresswoman Crockett. You're taking one example and twisting it into a condemnation of an entire system. Meritocracy has created opportunities for millions of Americans. It is a pillar of justice. What you're doing is nothing more than tearing this nation down." His voice was loud, urgent, but lacked the iron certainty it carried at the start. Jasmine didn't rise. She sat firm, gaze, unflinching, her words landing like nails driven into wood. "No, Senator. I am not tearing this country down. I am exposing its truth. And the truth is, meritocracy has never been absolute. Elliot Harmon was only one of thousands, tens of thousands turned away. They were good enough, but they didn't have the skin color or the family name the system wanted. And that cannot be called fairness." Cameras zoomed in. A reporter typed, "Crockett, meritocracy has never been absolute." Cruz raised his hand, voice snapping harsher now. "You're politicizing this? This is emotion, not governance." Jasmine didn't give him room. She cut in her voice, quicker, sharper words like blows. "Politicizing is what you're doing, hiding truth behind pretty words. Politicizing is twisting quotas once used to bar black students into an excuse to deny social justice. Manipulation is telling America that talent alone is enough, when history shows thousands of talented people locked out at the gate. That senator is politicizing." Applause cracked from the back rows. The gavel hammered, but the noise rolled on. Cruz's jaw tightened, his shout strained. "You're exploiting history, waving an old letter to smear meritocracy. The American people won't be fooled." Jasmine sat tall, her voice cold, precise. "The American people are not fooled. They have lived this truth for decades. Danielle Harmon just stood here and told you her father lived his entire life believing he wasn't good enough. But the truth is, he was good enough. It was the system that rejected him. If you want to call that meritocracy, then your meritocracy is a lie." Applause thundered again, louder, defiant. The cameras cut to Cruz, his face flushed, his words rushed, uneven. He gestured wildly, but each phrase was drowned by the reaction around him. Across from him, Jasmine stayed composed. She didn't need to shout. She let the truth speak for itself. A reporter muttered under his breath, "Cruz looks like he's on defense. Crockett looks like she's carrying justice into the light." On social media, meritocracy or privilege began trending. Elliot Harmon's face spread across timelines paired with Jasmine's words. They were good enough, but they didn't have the skin color the system wanted. By the end of that hearing, no one remembered Cruz's opening attack. What they remembered was the image of a woman holding her ground, flipping the argument, and turning a political assault into an indictment of the system itself. When the gavel finally struck to recess, the chamber buzzed with low voices, but the verdict was already clear. The balance had shifted. Jasmine said nothing more. She simply raised the letter. A sheet of yellowed paper edges, frayed with one word printed plainly in the explanation quota. The chamber held its breath. Camera shutters exploded like a storm. Lenses zoomed in. A black woman in a dark blue suit, standing in the United States Capitol, holding a piece of history in front of Ted Cruz. The image froze in time, and within seconds, it began to spread everywhere. In the press gallery, a reporter whispered, eyes locked on the scene. "This is tomorrow's front page." Another nodded. "No one will remember what Cruz just said. They'll remember that paper." Jasmine lowered the letter, but the cameras had already captured it. One image was enough, the faded sheet. The word quota, glaring from the page, Cruz's face tense across from her. At that moment, the hashtag #DuonTorshach Quota 1964 appeared on Twitter. Within 10 minutes, it was trending at the top. Users shared the same photo Jasmine, holding the letter Cruz frozen stiff. Captions followed. One photo is louder than 1,000 excuses. Justice in her hands. Television networks dropped the analysis and cut straight to replaying the scene. CNN looped the shot, a commentator murmuring, "This is a symbol. The clash between power, clinging to privilege, and a voice demanding justice." Inside the chamber, Cruz scrambled to reclaim ground. He waved his hand. Voice sharp. "This is an old letter, a relic being exploited. We cannot let the past dictate the present." But no one listened. Reporters' hands left their keyboards, their eyes glued to Jasmine. Lawmakers murmured to each other. Control of the room had slipped from Cruz's hands. From the back, a lawmaker muttered, "He's lost it. The story's already out of his control." Jasmine didn't answer. She folded the letter, gently placed it on the table, and sat down. Her silence carried more weight than words. Outside, social media detonated. The photo of Jasmine with the letter was overlaid with captions, "Meritocracy" or "Privilege." Memes spread fast. Cruz beside the words, distorting history. Jasmine holding the letter under the caption, "History speaks for itself." Within an hour, media across America replayed the clip. Journalists called it the reversal moment. News tickers read, "Crockett exposes 1964 quota Cruz on the defensive." In Texas, Cruz's stronghold callers flooded into radio shows. "We've listened to Cruz for years." But tonight, all we saw was a man clinging to walls and a woman brave enough to put the truth in the open. Cruz reappeared minutes later, straining to respond. He accused Jasmine of political theater, but his words carried no weight. Every sentence was drowned out by the image plastered on millions of screens, Jasmine holding the letter, the word quota, unmistakable. In a newsroom in New York, an editor muttered, "He can talk all he wants. The public only remembers the picture." That night, the front pages hit the stands. The 1964 letter quota, exposed in the Capitol. The Washington Post called it the letter that shook the hearing. The New York Times wrote a historic moment when one piece of evidence shattered every excuse. Even Fox News, trying to spin the narrative, had no choice but to show the photo on screen. In the following days, Cruz canceled multiple public appearances. He withdrew from major meetings. His office refused to comment. But the verdict was already written. Cruz hadn't lost to rhetoric. He lost to the truth. Jasmine didn't need more words. The image itself became the symbol, a black woman in the Capitol holding a 1964 rejection letter, transforming a buried injustice into living proof of justice. From that moment, the debate was no longer just Cruz versus Jasmine. It had become America's debate privilege, fighting to survive against the rising voice of justice.